close your eyes for a moment. Not tightly, just softly, the way you might at the end of a long, warm day when the air is still and the light has begun to slope toward evening. And let yourself drift just a little back through time. Not in a hurry, not in any particular rush. Just let the years dissolve, one by one, like sand slipping through a lazy hand, until you find yourself standing somewhere very old, very quiet, and very, very hot. We're going to Egypt, but not the Egypt of postcards and pyramids, not the Egypt of golden tombs and towering statues. We are going to a different Egypt, the Egypt of the builders, the Egypt of the workers who, day after day under a sun that seemed to have no mercy, lifted stone after stone to create temples that would outlast empires, outlast dynasties, outlast even the names of the men who built them. It is a strange thing to think about, isn't it? To imagine the heat. Even if you have never been to the desert, you have felt a hot day. You have felt the way the pavement shimmers, the way the shade becomes a small kind of treasure. But the heat of ancient Egypt during the season of the sun, what the Egyptians called Shemu, the dry season, was something else. It was not just warm, it was a presence. It pressed down on everything, on the sand, on the stone, on the shoulders of the men who worked from the first gray light of dawn until the sky turned violet and then black. And these men, these workers, they were not slaves. That is one of the gentle, quiet surprises of history. The people who built the great temples of Egypt, the vast pylons, the columned halls, the sanctuaries that held the gods, were not an army of prisoners driven by whips. They were farmers, craftsmen, laborers from the villages along the Nile. They were men who, when the floodwaters of the river covered the fields, and there was no planting to be done, came to the construction sites to earn their bread and beer, to pay their taxes, to serve the pharaoh and the gods. They were ordinary men doing extraordinary work in extraordinary heat. And so we find ourselves here, somewhere near Thebes, or maybe Memphis, or perhaps in the south, at the site of a great temple to Amun. The exact place does not matter. What matters is the feeling of the morning. It is not yet hot. The sun is a pale disk rising over the eastern desert, and the air is still cool from the night. You can smell the river, the fresh mud, the green edges of the wheat fields. The workers are waking in their temporary camps, huts made of mud brick and palm leaves, clustered near the building site. They stretch. They yawn. They dip their hands into clay jars of water and splash their faces. They are not rushing. There is no alarm clock, no urgent summons. The work will begin when the light is enough, and it will end when the heat becomes too much. There's a rhythm to life under the sun, an ancient rhythm, and these men know it better than we could ever know our own schedules. I want you to picture one of them. Let us call him Seneb. It is a common name, meaning healthy, which is a nice thought. Seneb is a stonemason. He is not young, not old. He has done this work for many seasons. His hands are scarred and calloused. His skin is the color of the earth after rain, a deep brown that has been darkened by years of sun. He wears only a loincloth of white linen, wrapped loosely around his hips. His head is bare, or perhaps He covers it with a simple cloth, not to look fashionable, but to keep the sun from burning his scalp. He carries his tools in a leather bag, a hammer of dolerite, a chisel of copper, a measuring cord made of knotted flax. These are simple things, but with them, he will help shape stone that weighs more than a dozen men. He will chip away at granite and sandstone, smoothing surfaces, carving hieroglyphs, fitting blocks so precisely that a blade of grass could not slide between them. The first task of the day is to go to the river, not for drinking, though that will come later. They go to wash, to refresh their bodies after the night. The Nile is the great giver. It is the reason Egypt exists at all. Without it, the desert would have swallowed everything. The workers walk in a loose group, talking quietly. They discuss the weather, the work, the gossip from the villages. They laugh sometimes, a low, easy laugh. They are not unhappy. The work is hard, yes, but they are together, and there is a kind of comfort in shared labor. They kneel at the water's edge, cup their hands, and drink. The water is muddy, but it is cool. It tastes of silt and life. They splash it on their arms, their faces, their chests. It is a small ritual, a way of saying goodbye to the coolness before the day becomes a furnace. Now, let us talk about the heat itself, because it is the central character of this story. It is not an enemy, not exactly. It is more like a force, a presence that must be understood and respected. The desert sun in Upper Egypt can push temperatures well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is in the shade. Out in the open, on the white limestone of a temple floor, the heat is reflected and amplified. It shimmers. It makes the air dance. It can fool your eyes into seeing pools of water that are not there. The ancient Egyptians knew this. They had a word for it, a word that meant something like to burn, to be parched. They described the mouth of a man dying of thirst as a kiln. It was not a metaphor. It was a literal description. How did Seneb and his fellows survive this? How did they labor from dawn until the sun was at its peak, lifting, hammering, dragging, hauling, without collapsing? The answer is not one thing. It is a collection of small, clever, deeply human strategies. And the first of these strategies is the most obvious one, but it is worth sitting with for a moment. They started early, very early. In the season of the sun, the work day began at first light, which came around 5 in the morning, when the air was still sweet and the stones were cool to the touch. They worked for about 4 hours, until the heat began to climb past the point of comfort. Then they stopped. There was no shame in stopping. The Egyptians understood that the sun was a god, Ra, who sailed his boat across the sky, and when he was directly overhead, his fire was too fierce for men to work. So they rested. They ate their midday meal in the shade of a temporary awning made of woven reeds. They drank beer, not the beer we know today. This was a thick, slightly fermented brew, more like a porridge, nourishing and hydrating. It was not strong, just a little sour, and it was one of the main sources of calories and fluid for the workers. They also ate bread made from emmer wheat, sometimes with a little oil or onions. It was not a feast, but it was enough. And then, When the sun began to slide down the western sky, they returned to work for another 4 hours, until the light faded and they could no longer see the lines they were cutting. So the day was split in two, like a long breath. Work in the cool morning, rest through the blistering noon, work again in the softer afternoon. This is called a siesta, but it is older than that word. It is the rhythm of the desert, the rhythm that every hot land knows. But there is more to the story, because even with the split schedule, the heat was still dangerous. The workers needed to stay hydrated, and they did not have plastic bottles or coolers. They had clay pots, large, porous pots that were kept in the shade, filled with water from the Nile. The water seeped through the clay and evaporated on the outside, keeping the contents cool. It is a simple principle, the same one that has kept desert travelers alive for thousands of years. The workers would take breaks, not on a schedule, but whenever their throats felt like sand. They would walk to the pots, drink, and then go back to their places. No one hurried them. There was a foreman, yes, a scribe who kept records and made sure the work was progressing. But he was not a tyrant. He knew that a dead worker is a useless worker. He wanted them to drink. There is a lovely detail from the archaeological record. At the site of Deir el-Medina, the village of the workmen who built the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, they have found records of water deliveries. The state, the temple administration, provided water for the workers. They brought it in jars carried by donkeys. They stationed water carriers at the work site. It was an organized, official system. So when Seneb felt his head begin to pound and his skin grow dry, he did not have to beg. He could simply raise a hand, and a boy would bring him a jar. It is a small thing, but it tells us that the ancient Egyptians understood the science of survival, even if they did not call it science. They called it wisdom. And then there is the matter of the stone itself. The temples they built were not just thrown together. They were designed with the heat in mind. The massive walls, the thick columns, the deep shadows of the hypostyle halls. These offered shelter. A worker carving a hieroglyph on a column could stand in the shade of the very stone he was shaping. The temples were oriented to catch the cool breezes from the north. They had high windows, clear stories, that let the hot air rise and escape. The floors were often sloped to allow water to run off after the rare rains. It was architecture that breathed. And when the workers had to move huge blocks from the quarry to the temple site, they did not do it in the heat of the day. They did it at dawn or in the evening, or sometimes by moonlight, when the stones themselves were cooler and the work was less punishing. But I want to linger on a detail that may seem small, but which I find very touching. The workers brought their families, not to work, but to the settlements near the construction sites. There were villages of mud brick, with narrow, winding streets, small courtyards, ovens for baking bread. Women cooked and wove. Children played among the stones. In the evening, when the work stopped, the workers went home. They did not live in a camp of desperate men. They lived in communities. They had wives, parents, children. They had neighbors. They had gossip. They had feasts on festival days. This is an important part of surviving the heat. It is not just about water and shade. It is about having a reason to endure. When Seneb lifted a block of sandstone that weighed as much as a horse, he did it knowing that he would return to his home, to his wife who had cooked a meal, to his children who would run to him and hold his calloused hands. He was not alone, and in a very real way, that is a form of protection against the harshness of the world. The sun sets slowly here. It is not like the hurried sunsets of the north. The sky turns gold, then orange, then a deep bruised purple. The heat begins to lift. The stones give back the warmth they have stored all day. The air becomes still, then a cool breeze rises from the river. The workers gather in the open space in front of the temple. Some sit on blocks of stone. Some lie on mats. They share a meal. They sing, perhaps. A man plays a reed flute. Another tells a story. It is a quiet, peaceful time. They are tired, but it is a good tired, the tired of honest work. They look at the temple rising against the stars, and they know that they are building something that will stand for thousands of years. They know that their grandchildren will see it. They know that the gods will dwell inside it. And in that knowledge, there is no room for complaint about the heat. The heat is just part of the bargain, part of the deal you make with the desert when you choose to build a home for the divine. So, as you lie there, warm and comfortable, perhaps with a blanket drawn up to your chin, consider Seneb. He is resting now. He has no blanket. He sleeps on a reed mat on a bed of packed earth with perhaps a rolled cloth for a pillow. The night air is cool on his skin. The stars are brilliant. He does not think of the heat. He does not think of the sweat. He thinks of tomorrow, of the work, of the stone that waits for his hands. And then he drifts slowly into sleep. It is the sleep of the just, the sleep of the builder, the sleep of one who has survived another day under the eye of the sun. Let yourself drift with him. Let the desert hold you too. There is no hurry. There is only the slow turning of the earth, the ancient rhythm of work and rest, and the quiet story of how men and women endured, not because it was easy, but because they had no choice, and because they found, in the end, that endurance is itself a kind of grace. And so the night continues. The stars wheel overhead, slow and patient, as they have for thousands of years. Seneb sleeps, and the village around him sleeps too. The only sound is the distant cry of a jackal, or the rustle of a palm frond in the faint breeze. The desert is quiet. It is a deep, listening quiet, the kind that settles into your bones and makes you feel very small, but also very safe, because you are part of something larger than yourself. But let us stay with Seneb a little longer. Let us wake him gently before the sun rises. He stirs in the dark. The air is cool, almost cold, as it always is in the hour before dawn. He does not groan or complain. He has done this 1,000 times. He sits up, stretches his arms above his head, and feels the stiffness in his shoulders. He is not young anymore. He is maybe 30, which in that time is middle-aged. His back aches from years of lifting and carrying, but he does not think of it as pain. He thinks of it as the mark of his work, like the calluses on his hands. He stands, wraps a length of linen around his waist, and steps out of his house. The village is still dark. A few houses have the glow of a small fire where a wife is already baking bread for the day. The smell of smoke and grain drifts through the narrow streets. Seneb walks to the well, a deep shaft lined with stone, and draws water. He splashes it on his face, his chest, his arms. The water is cold, and he shivers. It is a good shiver. It wakes him fully. He drinks a little, then goes to find his crew. The crew gathers in the open space near the village gate. There are maybe a dozen men, all of them dressed in simple linen kilts, some with a cloth draped over their shoulders against the morning chill. They carry tools, copper chisels, stone hammers, wooden mallets, ropes. A few have baskets for carrying debris. They are quiet, still half asleep, but they are ready. The foreman, a man named Kenti, has a papyrus roll with a list of tasks. He reads it aloud by the light of a small oil lamp. Today, they will work on the inner sanctuary of the temple, the most sacred part. The walls must be smoothed and polished. The hieroglyphs must be carved with precision. The gods are watching. They walk to the temple site. It is a mile away, along a path worn smooth by generations of feet. The sky begins to lighten in the east, a pale gray that slowly turns pink, then gold. The stars fade. The air is still cool, but the promise of heat is already there, like a held breath. Seneb walks in silence. He is thinking of the stone, the shape it will take under his hands. He is thinking of the god, perhaps Sobek, the crocodile god, who is to be honored in this sanctuary. He does not know what the god looks like. He only knows that the stone must be perfect, because the god will see it. When they arrive, the temple rises before them, vast and still. It is not finished. Some walls are rough, some columns are only half carved, but even incomplete, it is magnificent. The pylons, the massive gateways, tower above them. The sun, now just a sliver above the horizon, throws long shadows across the courtyard. The men fan out. They collect their tools from the shed, a low building of mud brick where the more valuable items are stored overnight. Seneb takes his chisel, a bronze one this time, a gift from the overseer because he is skilled. The bronze holds a sharper edge than copper. He runs his thumb along it, testing. It is good. The work begins. It is the same rhythm every day. The chisel strikes the stone with a clean, ringing sound. Tap, tap, tap. A chip flies off. Tap, tap, tap. Another. The sound is like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. Seneb works on a section of wall that will depict the pharaoh offering incense to the gods. He must carve the outline of the pharaoh's figure, the curved headdress, the false beard, the kilt. It is meticulous work. If he carves too deep, the stone will crack. If he carves too shallow, the paint will not hold. He has done this so many times that his hands know the motions without his mind having to guide them. He can think of other things while he works. He thinks of the river. The Nile is the reason any of this is possible. It is not just water for drinking. It is the artery of Egypt. The stone they are cutting was brought from quarries far to the south, floated on barges when the floodwaters rose. The flood came every year, like clockwork, in the summer. It turned the desert into a green ribbon of life. It deposited rich silt on the fields, so that the farmers could grow wheat and barley and flax, and it provided the water that the workers drank. Without the Nile, there would be no temples, no civilization, no Seneb. He knows this in a quiet way. He does not think of it every day, but he feels it, like the ground beneath his feet. The morning passes. The sun climbs higher. The shadows shorten. The air thickens with warmth. Seneb's skin begins to glisten with sweat. He wipes his forehead with the back of his hand. The chisel grows hot in his grip. He works a little longer, then hears the foreman call out, "Time to stop." They set down their tools. Some of the men go to the water jars, large clay pots that have been placed in the shade of a temporary awning. The water is cool, still cool, because the clay allows evaporation. Seneb drinks deeply. The water tastes of clay, a little earthy, but it is life. He fills a cup and drinks again. Then he sits on a block of sandstone in the shade and waits for the meal. The meal is brought by donkeys, led by boys. There are baskets of bread, loaves shaped like flat discs, a bit dense, but filling. There are onions, white and sharp. There are dried fish, salted and tough, but good for chewing. And there is beer. The beer is thick, like a thin porridge, and it is slightly sour. It is not cold, but it is wet. It is the most refreshing thing they have. Seneb takes a long drink from his clay cup. He feels the nourishment spread through him. He tears off a piece of bread, dips it in a small dish of oil, and eats. The oil is from sesame seeds, pressed and strained. It is a luxury, but the workers are given a little, because fat is needed for energy. They eat in silence. Some of the men lie down on mats and close their eyes. Seneb does the same. He finds a spot where the shade is deepest, near the base of a thick column. He lies on his back, his hands behind his head. He looks up at the ceiling of the temporary awning, woven from palm fronds, letting the light filter through in lazy patterns. He is not asleep, but he is resting. His breathing slows. His muscles release. The heat is all around him, but he has stopped fighting it. He has surrendered to the afternoon, to the stillness, to the slow passage of time. And then, after a few hours, when the sun has begun its descent and the shadows stretch out again, they return to work. It is the same pattern. Tap, 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 the chisel against the stone, the steady rhythm of creation. The sun is lower now, less aggressive. The air is still warm, but there is a hint of coolness, a promise of evening. Seneb works with renewed energy. He wants to finish the pharaoh's headdress today. He wants to see it take shape. He carves the line of the brow, the curve of the cobra on the crown, the delicate sweep of the lappets falling over the shoulders. It is satisfying work. As the sun sets, the light slants through the columns, casting long golden bars across the courtyard. The dust in the air catches the light, making the whole scene feel sacred. Seneb steps back to admire his work. The pharaoh's face is still blank, but the outline is clear. Tomorrow he will carve the eye, the nose, the mouth. And then a painter will come, a man skilled with pigments, to fill the carving with color. Seneb does not do that part. He only shapes the stone. But that is enough. The day ends. The men gather their tools and walk back to the village. The path is dusty, the air filled with the smell of cooking fires. Children run ahead, laughing. A woman calls out to her husband. Seneb enters his house, a small home of mud brick with a courtyard. His wife, Nefert, has prepared a meal. There is a stew of beans and garlic, with a little bit of meat, perhaps a duck that she traded for at the market. She also has fresh bread and more beer. They sit on low stools and eat. Their children, a boy of 6 and a girl of 4, sit with them. The boy is already learning to carve wood. The girl helps her mother with the weaving. They talk about the day. Seneb does not say much. He is too tired, but he listens. Nefert tells him about a neighbor who had a baby, about a dispute over a donkey, about the market prices for fish. It is small talk, the currency of daily life, and it is comforting. After the meal, Seneb goes to the courtyard. He lies down on a mat, looking up at the stars. The sky is dark now, with a scattering of stars so thick it looks like a silver river. He knows the constellations, as all Egyptians do. There is the bull, the hippopotamus, the hunter Orion. He finds the north and the stars that never set. They are his compass, his clock. The night air is cool. He closes his eyes. He is tired, but it is the good tired again. He feels his body settle into the earth. He hears the distant sound of a drum from another village, a festival perhaps. But it is faint, and soon it fades. And so the day ends, and the next day begins the same way, and the next. The temple grows slowly, stone by stone. The heat comes and goes with the seasons. The workers adapt. They learn the rhythms of the sun and the river. They find ways to survive not just through water and shade, but through community, through purpose, through the quiet dignity of doing something that matters. Perhaps the most important thing, the thing that we miss when we think about ancient Egypt, is that the builders were not slaves in the way we imagine. They were craftsmen, farmers, laborers who were paid in grain and beer and oil. They had rights. They could complain. They could go on strike. And in fact, they did sometimes when their pay was late. The records from Deir el-Medina include a strike report. The workers sat down, refused to work, and demanded their rations. And the state responded, not with violence, but with negotiation. They were given what they were owed. This tells us that the relationship between the workers and the rulers was not simple. It was a contract, a mutual dependence. The pharaoh needed his temples. The workers needed their bread. And both sides understood that the desert heat was a common enemy, not something to be used as a punishment, but something to be managed together. So when you imagine the great temples of Egypt, do not think only of the stone, the gold, the towering statues. Think of the men and women who built them, who endured the sun, who drank from clay pots, who ate their bread with onions, who slept on mats under the stars. They are not ghosts. They are ancestors. And in the quiet of the night, when you listen closely, you can almost hear the tap of the chisel, the murmur of voices, the laughter of children. It is a sound that has not faded. It is woven into the stone itself. And now, as the story winds on, let the image of Seneb slipping into sleep stay with you. He is lying in his courtyard, the stars wheeling above him, the cool air brushing his skin. He is at peace. The heat of the day is gone. work is done. Tomorrow he will wake and do it again. But for now, there is only the darkness, the stillness, the deep rhythm of the earth turning. You can let yourself follow him into that sleep. There is no rush. The story will still be here when you open your eyes again, and so will the desert, and so will the memory of those who built beneath the sun. So rest now. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts drift like the smoke from a dying fire. Let the voices of ancient Egypt fade to a whisper, a lullaby. The temple is built. The gods are pleased. And you are safe, wrapped in the warmth of your blanket, carried by the gentle current of history, floating toward a quiet, dreamless sleep. The next morning, Seneb wakes before the sun. The air is cool, the first light just a pale gray on the horizon. He lies still for a moment, listening to the sounds of the village waking. A rooster crows, a dog barks, a woman begins to grind grain, the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone. He gets up, stretches his arms above his head, and feels the stiffness in his shoulders. It is the stiffness of a body that has spent years shaping stone. It will never fully go away, but it is a familiar ache like an old friend. He walks to the edge of his courtyard and pours water from a clay jar over his hands and face. The water is cool, drawn from the well the night before. He splashes it on his chest, and the sensation makes him shiver. He dries himself with a linen cloth, then dresses in a simple loincloth. He goes inside, where Nefert is already tending the fire. She hands him a piece of bread and a cup of beer. He eats standing, looking out the door at the growing light. The sky is turning pink, then orange. The sun is about to rise. He leaves before the sun is fully up, walking with the other men along the path to the temple site. The air is still cool, and the dust is not yet in the air. The birds are singing, or at least the Egyptian birds, the ones that nest in the palms and the reeds. They are not songbirds like you might think, but they have their own calls, sharp and bright. Seneb finds them pleasant. When they reach the work site, the temple is still in shadow. The foreman is already there, a man named Ka, who has been a builder for 30 years. He is old now, with a withered leg from an accident long ago, but he knows the stone. He knows how it behaves, how it splits, how it sings under the chisel. He assigns each man to his task. Seneb returns to the statue of the pharaoh. The face is now partially carved, the left eye socket hollowed out, the brow defined. Today he will start on the nose. He picks up his copper chisel and mallet. He positions the chisel at the edge of the stone where the nose will be, the bridge that runs down to the tip. He taps. The sound is sharp, a clear note. A small flake of stone falls away. He taps again. He is patient. The stone does not rush. It yields slowly, grain by grain. He works in silence, concentrating on the line of the nose, the slight flare of the nostrils. He wants it to be perfect, because the pharaoh is a god in stone, and any mistake would be a flaw in the divine. After an hour, the sun rises above the temple wall, and the heat begins to press down. Seneb feels it on his shoulders, his back. He wipes the sweat from his brow. He knows the drill. He will work for another hour, then take a break in the shade. He will drink water, eat a little bread, then work again until noon, when the heat is unbearable. and then he will rest until the afternoon. But there is a different rhythm today. The foreman announces that the priests are coming to bless the stone. A small procession enters the site, carrying incense and a statue of Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. The workers stop and turn. The priest chants, sprinkles water on the stones, waves the incense. It is a ritual to purify the site and to ask the gods to keep the builders safe. Seneb bows his head. He is not a deeply religious man, but he knows that the gods are powerful, and it is wise to show respect. The incense smells of myrrh and frankincense, a fragrance from the south, from the land of Punt. It is expensive, but it is used for the gods. Seneb breathes it in deeply. It calms him. The priest finishes, and the procession leaves. Work resumes. But there is a new energy now. The blessing has made the day feel significant, as if the stone itself is listening. Seneb returns to the nose. He carves the left side, then the right, shaping the bridge, the tip, the nostrils. He steps back. It looks good. It looks like a nose. He smiles. Even after so many years, it gives him a small thrill to see the face emerge from the stone. As the morning wears on, the heat grows. Seneb feels it in his throat, his eyes. He drinks from his water jar every few minutes. He learns to sip, not gulp. Gulping makes his stomach slosh and his head ache. Sips are better. He dips his headband in water and wraps it around his neck. The cooling is immediate. He remembers a trick an old worker taught him. Wet the cloth and put it under his cap. Keeps the head cool. He does that now, and the relief is noticeable. At noon, the meal break comes. The men gather in the shade, sitting on blocks of stone or on the ground. They eat bread, onions, and the dried fish. Seneb chews slowly. He thinks about the evening meal. Nefert said she would try to get a green vegetable, perhaps some lettuce or leeks. The workers do not get much fresh produce. Most of the vegetables go to the priests and the nobles. But sometimes, when a farmer has extra, they trade. Seneb hopes she is successful. He loves the crispness of lettuce, the bitterness. After the meal, the men lie down. Some sleep. Seneb does not. He watches the heat shimmer above the stones. The air is so dry it feels like it is pulling the moisture from his lungs. He breathes slowly through his nose. He thinks about the river. He thinks about swimming in the Nile, the way the water feels cool and muddy, the way it cleanses the skin. He will go there tonight after work with his children. They will splash and laugh. It is the only way to truly wash off the day. The afternoon work passes without incident. Seneb finishes the nose and begins the mouth. He carves the lips, full and proud, the slight curve of a smile. The pharaoh will look benevolent, but also strong. He carves the line of the jaw, the chin. The face is taking shape. It is not yet painted, but it is alive in the stone. As the sun lowers, the light changes again. The shadows lengthen. The stones turn golden. Seneb puts down his tools. The foreman claps his hands. The day is done. The men gather their things and begin the walk back. But tonight is different. There is a festival in the village, a celebration for the god Min, the god of fertility and the harvest. The workers are given extra rations, more beer, some roasted meat, and a special bread made with honey. Seneb carries his share home. Nefert has already started cooking, but she adds the meat to the stew. The children are excited. They will stay up late, dancing and watching the processions. The village square is lit with torches. A makeshift altar is set up, and the priest offers prayers. There is music, drums and flutes and rattles. People sing songs that are old, older than the oldest workers. Seneb sways to the rhythm. He holds his daughter in his arms, and she claps along. He feels the community around him, the warmth of their bodies, the joy of the night. The heat of the day fades into memory. The sky is dark, but the torches create a warm, flickering light. Seneb eats the honey bread. It tastes of sweetness and effort. He drinks the beer. He feels a lightness in his head, a gentle intoxication. He is tired, but it is a good tired, the kind that comes from a day of honest work and a night of celebration. Later, after the festivities wind down, he walks home slowly. The village is quieting. He checks on the children, already asleep on their mats. He lies down next to Nefert. She whispers something about the day, but he does not catch it. He is already drifting. The stars are above, the same stars that have watched over the builders for 1,000 years. Seneb closes his eyes. The temple will still be there tomorrow. The heat will return. But for now, there is only the cool night, the soft breathing of his family, and the deep sleep that comes to those who have spent their lives shaping stone under the sun. And you, listening, can let yourself feel that same sleep. The story has not ended. There are more days to come, more stone to shape, more festivals to celebrate. But the rhythm of their lives is a gentle one, a cycle of effort and rest, of heat and cool, of sun and stars. You can let that rhythm carry you too. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let the sounds of ancient Egypt become the sounds of your own room. The tap of the chisel fades. The voices of the village become the hum of the night. You are safe. You are resting. And the temple, the great temple built by generations of workers who survived the desert heat, stands against the sky, silent and eternal. A reminder that even the hardest work can be done with patience, with community, with a quiet heart. So sleep now. Let the honey bread and the beer and the torchlight drift through your dreams. Let Seneb and Nefert and the children fade into the soft shadows of history. They are not gone. They are part of the stone, part of the air, part of the story you carry with you into the night. And in the morning, when you wake, the sun will rise again. But for now, there is only the deep, gentle dark. Good night. You wake the next morning, or rather, Seneb wakes, and you feel the familiar ache in his shoulders, the dry taste in his mouth. The first light filters through the reeds of the doorway. Nefert is already up, stirring the embers of the fire. She hands him a piece of bread and a small clay cup of water. He dips the bread, eats it slowly. The day is beginning again, but there is a difference. Today, the foreman has announced a special task. The temple's main hall needs a new row of pillars, and the workers will be moving a massive block of granite from the quarry to the site. It is a day of heavy lifting, of coordinated effort, of the kind of work that makes a man feel his own strength and his own smallness. Seneb finishes his breakfast and walks to the gathering place. The men are assembling, 100 or more, each with a rope or a lever. The granite block sits on a wooden sledge, a flat bed of logs lashed together. The foreman directs them to take positions. Seneb finds a place along one of the ropes, a thick braid of papyrus fibers. He wraps it around his hand, feels the roughness. The foreman shouts a command, and they pull. The sledge moves a handbreadth, then another. The men chant a rhythm, a simple song about the strength of the river. Ha, pull. Ha, pull. The sound is low, guttural, a heartbeat in the dust. The sun climbs, and the heat builds. Seneb feels the rope burn into his palm, but he does not let go. He pulls with his legs, his back, his whole body. The other men pull too together, as if they are one muscle. They pour water on the path in front of the sledge to reduce friction. The wet sand turns to mud, and the sledge slides a little easier. Every few minutes, they stop to rest. The men drink from shared water jars, pour water over their heads, their necks. The water is warm, but it is water. By mid-morning, they have moved the block halfway to the temple. The foreman is pleased. He allows a longer break. The men sit in the shadow of the block itself, which casts a narrow strip of shade. Seneb leans against the cool stone. He closes his eyes. He hears the chatter of the other workers, but it becomes a distant murmur. He thinks about the river again, but now he thinks about the mud. Mud bricks. The workers use mud bricks for the ramps and the scaffolding. They mix the mud, straw, and water, press it into molds, and leave it to dry in the sun. It is a slow process, but the bricks are sturdy. They are the skeleton of the construction, the temporary pathways that allow the stone to rise. And you, listener, can imagine the smell of that mud, the wet earth, the straw, the dust of the desert mixing together. It is a scent that lingers on the workers' hands, their clothes, even their breath. It is the smell of the Nile, of life and decay, of the annual flood that brings new soil and new hope. The workers use that mud not just for bricks, but for plaster, for mortar, for the small repairs that keep the temple whole. They are builders of stone, but they are also children of the mud, and they understand that both have their purpose. The break ends. They pull again. The afternoon sun beats down. Seneb feels his lips cracking. He licks them, tastes salt and dust. He remembers a trick the old workers taught him. Chew on a piece of dried ginger root. It stimulates saliva, keeps the mouth moist. He has a small piece in his pouch. He bites off a corner, chews slowly. The warmth spreads through his mouth, and he feels a little better. The ginger is a luxury, traded from the south, but it is worth the cost. As the sun begins to lower, they reach the temple. The granite block is positioned at the base of the ramp. Tomorrow, they will begin the long, slow haul up to the top of the pillar. But for now, the work is done. Seneb unties his rope, flexes his fingers. His hands are raw, but he has done this before. He will wrap them in linen tonight, and they will heal. The walk back to the village is quiet. The men are tired, too tired to speak. Seneb's feet drag in the dust. He passes the fields, where the irrigation channels glisten in the dying light. The water wheels creak, a sound as old as the land itself. He sees the farmers walking home, their donkeys laden with crops. Everyone is moving toward the same thing: the evening meal, the rest, the brief coolness before the sun returns. Neffert has the stew ready. It is thick with beans and onions, a little garlic, a splash of oil. Seneb dips his bread, eats without speaking. The children are quiet too, sensing his exhaustion. After the meal, he goes to the river. He wades in, feels the water embrace his legs, his waist. He ducks under, lets the current wash over him. The mud and the dust and the sweat all dissolve, carried away into the great Nile, to the sea, to the unknown. He stands up, shakes his head, and feels clean. He lies down on the bank, his back on the warm earth, his eyes on the stars. The river murmurs beside him. The night air is soft, carrying the scent of jasmine from a nearby garden. He thinks about the temple, about the pillar that will one day hold up the roof of the hall, about the millions of workers who have come before him and the millions who will come after. He feels small, but he also feels connected. He is a thread in a great tapestry, a single note in a song that has been playing for centuries. And you, listening, can feel that connection too. You can imagine yourself beside Seneb, your feet in the water, your head resting on the bank. The stars are the same stars that the ancient Egyptians saw, the same constellations they named. There is Orion, the hunter, whom they called Sa, the father of the gods. There is the Milky Way, the celestial Nile, a river of light. The workers used the stars to navigate the desert, to plan the construction, to know when the flood would come. The sky was their calendar, their clock, their map. Seneb closes his eyes. He drifts into a light sleep, half dreaming. He sees the temple completed, the paint bright, the statues glowing in the sun. He sees the pharaoh entering the hall, a god walking among gods. He sees himself, a small figure in the corner, his chisel in his hand, his face lifted toward the stone. He has left his mark, not in a name carved into the wall, but in the shape of a nose, the curve of a lip, the smooth surface of a pillar. That is enough. The days continue. They are all similar, but each one is different. Some days, Seneb works on the pillars, shaping the hieroglyphs that tell the story of the pharaoh's victories. He carves the signs with care, using a mallet and a chisel, following the lines drawn by the scribes. The scribes are the masters of words, the keepers of knowledge. They use reed brushes and ink, made from soot and gum, to trace the outlines on the stone. Seneb chisels where the ink is, and the stone becomes a story. Other days, he works on the walls, smoothing them with sandstone blocks, rubbing until the surface is so flat it feels like glass. The heat is always there, a constant companion. But the workers have learned to pace themselves. They work in the early morning, rest at noon, work again in the late afternoon. They sleep through the hottest part of the day in the shade of the walls or under makeshift canopies of woven reeds. They drink water, but they also drink beer, which is nourishing and refreshing. The beer is thick, almost a porridge, and it provides calories and hydration. The workers also take care of their feet. The ground is hot, the stone is sharp. They wear sandals made of papyrus or leather, but the soles wear out quickly. Every few days, the village weavers supply new ones. Seneb has a favorite pair made from the hide of an old cow, soft and durable. He wears them until they fall apart, then starts again. The community is a web of mutual care. If a worker is ill, the others share his load. If a family has no food, the neighbors bring bread. The children play together, learning the ropes by watching their fathers and uncles. The older workers teach the younger ones the tricks of the trade: how to strike a chisel at the right angle, how to avoid the glare of the sun on white stone, how to breathe through the dust. They pass down the knowledge that has been passed down for generations. One afternoon, a sandstorm blows in from the desert. The sky turns yellow, the air thick with grit. The workers stop, cover their faces with cloth, and huddle behind the walls. The storm lasts for hours. When it passes, they are covered in a fine layer of dust. They shake it off, spit it out, and resume work. The temple is still standing. The stone is clean. The storm has done no damage, only reminded them that the desert is powerful, unpredictable, and alive. And you, listener, can hear the wind howling in that memory, the fine sand scraping against the stone. But you are safe, lying in your own bed, the covers pulled up. The sandstorm is just a story, a distant sound. The workers endured it as they endured everything. They were not heroes, not in the grand sense. They were simply people who got up every morning and did what needed to be done. The weeks pass. The pillars are raised. The roof is placed. The temple takes shape, a mountain of stone carved into a house for the gods. Seneb watches from the ground as the final block is set in place, the peak of the pylon gate. The foreman lights a small fire on the altar, and the priest offers a prayer of thanks. The workers cheer, a sound that echoes off the walls. It is done, but there is always more work. The temple is never truly finished. There are decorations to add, statues to carve, inscriptions to complete. The workers will stay here for years, maybe a lifetime. Seneb is content with that. He knows his place in the world, and his place is here, in the dust and the sun, shaping stone. He goes home that evening, and the walk is peaceful. The sunset paints the desert in shades of orange and gold. He stops at the edge of the village, looks back at the temple. It is silhouetted against the sky, dark and solid. He feels a pride that he cannot put into words. He is not a scribe. He does not write his name, but the temple is his testimony. Nefert is waiting with a pot of tea made from dried mint and a little honey. He sits down, sips slowly. The children come to him, climb onto his lap. He tells them a story, a simple one, about the sun god Ra and his journey across the sky. The girl asks if Ra ever gets tired. Seneb says yes, but he keeps going because the world needs the light. The boy asks if the stone ever gets tired. Seneb laughs. No, the stone never gets tired. The stone is eternal. And you, listener, can let that thought sink into your own mind. The stone is eternal. The work is eternal. And you, too, are part of that eternity, even if only for a moment. The story of Seneb and his people is not a distant history. It is a living thread, woven into the fabric of the earth. The temples still stand. The stones still hold the marks of their labor. And tonight, as you drift toward sleep, you can let their strength become your strength, their patience become your patience, their peace become your peace. Let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of your own body against the mattress. Imagine the cool stone of the Temple of Amun, or the Temple of Hathor, or any of the great halls that rise from the sand. The builders are gone, but their breath is in the air, their footsteps in the dust. You are walking with them, a silent companion, a witness to their quiet triumph. The moon rises over the village. Seneb puts the children to bed. He lies down beside Nefert, his hand in hers. He is not thinking of the next day, not thinking of the heat, or the stone, or the chisel. He is simply present in the dark, in the quiet. His mind empties like a slow river, like a reed bending in the wind. And so should yours. There will be more to tell, more about the tools, the techniques, the songs. But for now, the night is deep and the story rests. Let it rest within you. Let the honey bread and the ginger root and the dust of the desert fade into the background. The only sound is the rhythm of your own breath, in and out, like the rise and fall of the Nile. Tonight you are Seneb. Tonight you are every worker who ever lifted a stone toward the sky. And you are safe, and you are sleeping, and the temple waits for the dawn. Good night. But the night is not yet done with its telling. While Seneb sleeps, the temple stands illuminated by the moon, its white stone glowing like bone. The desert is still. A jackal calls in the distance, a sound like a question without an answer. The guard at the gate shifts his weight, his spear resting against his shoulder. He is a young man, not yet 20, learning the patience of watchfulness. He listens to the silence, which is full of small sounds, the scuttle of a scarab beetle, the whisper of wind over sand, the creak of a wooden beam settling. The temple breathes, as all great structures do. The stone expands and contracts with the temperature, making tiny sounds like the ticking of a clock. The guard does not mind the solitude. He has been taught that the gods watch over him, and that his duty is a form of prayer. He thinks of his mother, who bakes bread in the village, and of his father, who once worked on this very temple. He is proud to stand here, alone under the sky. And you, listener, can imagine that guard. You can feel the cool air on your skin, the slight breeze that comes off the Nile. You are lying in your own bed, the sheets soft around you. The moonlight falls through your window, and you let your eyes rest on it. The guard's vigil is not lonely. It is connected to every other guard who ever stood watch, in every temple, in every age. The night watch is a thread that ties humanity together, a shared silence, a shared trust. The hours pass. The moon rides high, then begins its descent. The guard hears the first call of a bird, the first sign of dawn. He stretches, his muscles stiff from standing. The temple begins to emerge from the darkness, its edges sharpening. He sees the hieroglyphs on the pylon, the carvings of the pharaoh smiting his enemies, the images of the gods. The morning light catches the stone, and the colors seem to glow. The paint is still fresh in some places, red and blue and green, mixed with egg white and beeswax to make them last. The guard knows that these colors are sacred, that they hold the power of the gods. He touches the stone with his fingertips, a gesture of reverence. Then the first workers arrive. They come from the village, a stream of men and women, some carrying tools, others carrying baskets of bread and beer. The children run ahead, laughing. The foreman is already there, a man named Ketty, who has been in charge for 20 years. He has a long beard streaked with gray, and his eyes are sharp. He knows the names of every worker, knows which families have a newborn or a sick elder. He is respected, not feared. He greets each person with a nod, a word, a smile. The work begins again. Ketty has a plan for the day. The morning will be devoted to the inner sanctuary, where the most important statues will stand. The room must be clean, the floor smooth, the walls polished. The workers will use small balls of sandstone to rub the surface, a process that takes hours. They work in teams, one on each side of the wall, moving in unison. The sound is a low grinding, rhythmic, soothing. The dust rises, but they have learned to breathe through their noses, to keep their mouths closed. The overseers bring water in clay pots, and every worker takes a sip, never a gulp. The water is warm, but it is life. And you, listener, can hear that grinding sound, a soft rasp like sandpaper on wood. It is a sound of patience, of repeated motion. It is the sound of a people who understand that eternity is not a rush. The stone will wait. The gods will wait. The work is a meditation, a slow dance between the hand and the rock. By noon, the heat is fierce. The workers retreat to the shade of the partially built roof, where they sit cross-legged, eating their midday meal. The food is simple: bread, onions, a little fish, some dates. They drink beer, which is thick and filling. A storyteller begins to recite a tale about the god Horus, his voice carrying across the stone floor. The workers listen, some with their eyes closed, some nodding. The story is old, but it is new every time. It reminds them that the gods, too, struggled, that the world was born from conflict and love. The story ends, and the workers rest a little longer. Seneb sits with his friends, a man named Imhotep and another named Tefnut. They are joking about the foreman's new sandals, which are too tight and make him walk oddly. The laughter is quiet, not mocking. They are tired, but the break is a small pleasure. Seneb feels the ache in his hands, the calluses that have become like armor. He rubs a little oil into his palms, the oil of the castor plant, which cools and soothes. He thinks of the afternoon ahead, the work on the columns, the careful measurement of the fluting. He does not dread it. He simply accepts it. In the village, Nefert is also working. She is weaving a basket from palm fibers, her fingers moving quickly. The basket will be used to hold offerings, bread and oil and beer, for the temple's daily ritual. She works with other women, their voices low, a chorus of gossip and laughter. They talk about the children, the harvest, the price of fish. One of the women has a baby on her lap, nursing, and the baby's eyes are heavy with sleep. The women's hands never stop moving. They are building a different kind of temple, a web of kinship and care. The baskets they weave are as essential as the stone blocks. Without them, the offerings would have no container. The gods would go hungry. The women know this, though they rarely say it. They are proud of their craft, of the tight weave and the clean edge. And you, listener, can feel the rhythm of their hands. The weaving is like a lullaby, a repetition that calms the mind. The palm fibers smell sweet, like dried grass. The sun is warm on the women's shoulders, but they are protected by a canopy of reeds. They have a pot of water at their feet, and they drink from it together. The baby falls asleep, and the mother lays it on a blanket. The conversation continues, a soft murmur that rises and falls like the tide. The afternoon work begins. The men return to the temple, and Seneb climbs the scaffolding. He is working on a capital of a column, the part that resembles a lotus flower. He has a wooden mallet and a copper chisel, and he taps carefully, following the line of the scribe's ink. The copper is soft, and he must sharpen it often. He has a small whetstone in his pouch, and every few minutes he stops to hone the edge. The sound of the chisel is like a bell, a clear ringing note. It rings out across the site, and other chisels answer, a chorus of stone on stone. The dust clings to his skin, mixing with sweat. He wipes his face with a cloth, and the cloth comes away gray. He does not mind. The dust is part of him, a mark of his labor. He looks down at the yard below. The workers are moving a large block of granite using wooden rollers and ropes. They have poured water on the sand to make it slide more easily, a trick learned from the generations before. The block moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, but it moves. The foreman chants a rhythm, a simple call and response. The workers pull together, their feet finding purchase, their backs straining. The block arrives at the base of the ramp. It will be lifted tomorrow, using a system of levers and ramps. The planning is meticulous. The failure is not an option. Seneb watches the block, and he feels a connection to every worker who has moved stone. The same ropes, the same levers, the same muscles, the same sun, the same hope. He returns to his chisel, and he continues. The day rolls on, slow and heavy. The heat softens as the sun descends, and the workers find a new energy. They know that the end of the day is near, and they push a little harder. The shadows grow long, and the temple begins to cast a shadow over the village. The children run out to meet their fathers, carrying water skins. Seneb's girl brings him a gourd of water, and he lifts her up, her small arms around his neck. She is covered in dust too, from playing near the construction site. He laughs and carries her home. Nefert has the evening meal ready. It is a stew of beans and garlic with a little coriander. The bread is warm. They eat together, the family, and the noise of the village surrounds them. Other families are eating too, sitting outside their houses, the smoke from the fires rising into the sky. The stars begin to appear, first one, then a handful, then 1,000. The air cools. The sounds soften. And you, listener, can taste that stew, the garlic on your tongue, the soft bread. You can hear the voices of the village, the laughter, the occasional argument, the prayers. It is a sound of life, of people who have endured the heat and the work and are now resting. It is the sound of a world that is ancient and yet familiar. The same sounds you might hear in any village, in any time. The human heart does not change. After the meal, the children are put to bed. Seneb sits with Nefert outside their house. He looks at the temple, now dark against the starry sky. He thinks of the morning and of the chisel and of the work. He does not count the days. He does not think about the future. He is here now with her. She reaches for his hand. They are quiet for a long time. The fire crackles. A dog barks. The Nile flows unseen a mile away. The water is still there, carrying the silt, carrying the memory of the flood. The land is fertile because of it. The people are alive because of it. Seneb begins to hum a tune, a song his father taught him, a song about the sun god and the boat of millions of years. His voice is low, rough, but it carries. Nefert joins in, her voice higher, soft. They sing together, and the song drifts up into the night, joining the stars. And you, listener, can let that song carry you. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let the music fade, as all music fades, into the silence. The workers will rise again tomorrow. The chisel will ring again. The sun will burn again. But tonight, there is only the song and the two voices and the desert that surrounds them. The temple waits, patient and eternal. The stone is quiet. The stars are bright. And the story of Seneb, the stonecutter, continues, because it is your story too. Every breath you take is a chisel mark on the world. Every moment of rest is a gesture of peace. This is the gift of the ancient workers. They remind us that the work is never too heavy. The heat is never too fierce, as long as we share it, as long as we remember that we are not alone. Now, let your mind wander. Let it drift past the temple, past the village, past the river. Let it float on the dark water under the stars. The constellations rise and set. Orion follows his path across the sky. The Milky Way is a river of light, and you are floating on it. There is no hurry. There is no destination. There is only the slow current of the night. When you are ready, you can close your eyes. The workers have already closed theirs. Seneb is dreaming of a lotus, opening its petals to the sun. Nefert is dreaming of a basket full of bread. The children are dreaming of the temple, of climbing the columns like giants. And you are dreaming too, a dream within a dream, a story within a story. The desert heat is a memory, the temple a monument of peace. You are safe. You are warm. You are part of something ancient and gentle. Stay here as long as you like. The night is long, and the story is patient. There will be more days, more chisels, more bread. But for now, there is only the deep, quiet breath of the world. And yet, even as you rest, the world continues its slow turning. The stars wheel overhead, and the desert cools. The temple stones contract in the night air, making tiny sounds, a faint ticking like a wooden boat settling. Somewhere beyond the village, a jackal calls, a high, thin yelp that fades into the distance. The people do not stir. They are deep in their dreams, their bodies recovering from the day's labor. But there is one who is not entirely asleep. In the house next to Seneb's, an old man named Ka wakes. He is a scribe, retired now, his fingers bent from years of holding a reed brush. He lies on his mat and listens to the night. His eyes are open, though he does not see the darkness. He sees the lines of the temple, the precise angles, the hieroglyphs he himself painted decades ago. He remembers the day they finished the great hall, the day the pharaoh came to inspect. The dust, the heat, the chanting of the priests. He was young then, and his hand was steady. Ka does not sleep much anymore. His body is tired, but his mind is restless. He thinks of the gods. He thinks of Thoth, the god of writing, and of Mad, the principle of order. Every line he drew was a statement of Mad, a stone affirmation that the world was not chaos. The temple was a map of the cosmos, a mirror of the sky. And now, in the darkness, he feels the geometry of the building, even though he cannot see it. The columns are arranged like the papyrus stalks in the marsh. The ceiling is painted with stars. The whole edifice is a prayer made physical. You can imagine, listener, the old man's thoughts drifting like dust motes in the moonlight. He is not sad. He is simply aware. Time has become soft for him, like worn linen. He knows he will not see the temple completed in his lifetime. There are always additions, decorations, new chambers. The work is never finished because the gods are never satisfied. But that is all right. The work continues through his sons' sons. The temple will grow slowly, like a tree. And you too can feel that patience. There is no rush. The night is still, and the old man's breathing is shallow but steady. He closes his eyes, and the images come. The blue of the faience tiles, the gold leaf on the shrine doors, the red of the ochre pigment. He remembers mixing the paints himself, grinding the minerals with a stone, adding a drop of gum arabic to bind it. The smell of the crushed malachite, green as the Nile at flood. The taste of dust on his lips. The sky begins to pale. It is still deep blue, but the stars grow fainter. A rooster crows, a ragged sound that tears the silence. The village stirs. Someone coughs. A dog barks a reply. Zeneb's girl Merit wakes first. She is 5 years old, with dark eyes and a curiosity that never rests. She sits up on her mat and watches the light seep through the doorway. She hears her father's breathing, slow and heavy. She hears her mother's soft snore. She is hungry. She crawls off the mat and goes to the hearth, where a pot of porridge from last night sits cold. She dips her finger in and tastes it, and the coarse grain is comforting. The first light reaches the temple, and the shadows shift. The workers begin to appear, one by one, in the street. They stretch and yawn, their bodies stiff. They walk to the river to wash, splashing water on their faces and arms. The water is cool, almost cold. It wakes them fully. They talk in low voices, the morning greetings, the nonsense of half-sleep. Someone tells a joke, and laughter breaks out, sudden and bright. Seneb is among them. He rubs his shoulder, where the muscles ache from yesterday's chisel work. He stands at the water's edge and looks across the river. The east bank is still in shadow, but the sky above it is orange. The sun will rise soon. He bends and cups water into his mouth, then rinses his face. He feels the grit dissolve, the skin come alive. Back at the house, Nefert is also awake. She is building the fire, coaxing the embers into flame. She adds dried dung and a few twigs, and the smoke rises thin and blue. She will make fresh bread for the day. She has ground the emmer wheat the night before, and the flour is in a clay bowl. She mixes it with water, and a pinch of salt from a bag, kneading the dough with her palms. The motion is rhythmic, hypnotic. She could do it in her sleep, and sometimes she almost does. The children gather. Merritt and her younger brother, Ka, sit by the fire. They are quiet, waiting. Neffert forms the dough into flat rounds and places them on a heated stone. The smell of baking bread fills the house, and the children's mouths water. Seneb returns, his hair still damp. He sits with them, and they break the bread together, dipping it in a dish of oil and a little honey from a clay pot. It is a simple meal, but it tastes like the best thing in the world. And you, listener, can taste that bread. The honey is golden thick, and it makes the oil sweet. The bread is chewy, with a crust that crumbles. The warmth of the fire, the quiet of the family. This is the foundation of everything. This is the fuel for the temple. As they eat, they do not speak of the day ahead. There is no need. The work is known, the roles are understood. Seneb will go to the site. Neffert will tend the garden and the weaving. The children will play and help. It is a rhythm as old as the Nile. The sun clears the horizon, and the temple is lit with gold. The workers gather at the base of the ramp. The foreman, a man named Sekhmet Hotep, stands on a block of stone and addresses them. He does not raise his voice. He speaks the plan, the tasks for the day, the sections of the wall that need smoothing, the blocks that need to be moved. He is calm. The men listen. You know the details already, but the repetition is like a prayer. It binds them together. The day begins. Seneb climbs the scaffolding again. His chisel is sharp, his mallet is ready. He has a new line to follow, a design for a scene of the pharaoh offering lotus flowers to the god Amun. The outline is painted in red ink, the lines fine and clean. Seneb will carve them into the stone, making them permanent. He begins with the pharaoh's headdress, tracing the curve of the cobra, the sharp angles of the crown. The chisel bites, and the stone chips away. Each strike is a decision. There's no erasing in stone. He works slowly, carefully. The sun climbs, and the heat returns. The shade of the scaffold is slight, and the stone reflects the heat onto his face. He sweats, but he is used to it. He stops every 15 minutes to rest his eyes, to drink from his gourd. He looks out over the site. The other workers are like ants, moving in patterns. A line of men carries baskets of rubble away from a new pit. 2 men are lifting a block with a wooden lever. A scribe sits in the shade of a cloth canopy, drawing on a papyrus scroll, recording the work. That scribe is young, maybe 16. His name is Hesi. He is Ka's grandson. He is learning the craft, and his hand is not yet steady. He makes mistakes, and his teacher, an older scribe named Anku, corrects him. Anku is patient. He knows he was once young and clumsy. He watches Hesi's brush, and he sees the potential. Hesi tries hard, his tongue sticking out slightly as he concentrates. The ink is black, made from soot and gum, and it flows from the brush like water. Hesi writes the daily report: number of stones moved, amount of beer and bread distributed, the names of the workers who are absent, and why. One man is tending to his sick wife. Another has a foot injury. The work adapts. The temple will not be finished today, so a delay is just a delay. And you, listener, can feel the young scribe's frustration. His line wobbles, he sighs. Enku places a hand on his shoulder and says nothing. The silence is a lesson. Hesi tries again. The line is straight this time. He breathes out. The world of the temple is patient with him. The morning wears on. By midday, the heat is fierce. The workers stop, retreating to the shade of the wall or to the canopies set up by the village women. They eat a simple meal, bread and onions, a piece of dried fish, a handful of dates. They drink beer, the thick, nutritious brew that is a staple. It is not like modern beer. It is more like a soupy porridge with a low alcohol content. It is a source of calories and hydration. It is also a social lubricant, a way to share a moment. The men sit together, their legs stretched out, their voices low. They talk about the temple, the pharaoh, the gossip from the palace. They talk about the flood that is coming, the height of the water, the fate of the crops. They are farmers as well as builders. The temple is their temple, the river their river. Seneb sits with his friend Paineb, a carpenter who makes the wooden scaffolding frames. Paineb is thin, with a scar across his cheek from a slip with an adze. They eat together, sharing a loaf. Paineb tells a story about a donkey that got into the temple storeroom and ate a basket of offerings. They both laugh. The laughter is easy, and it quiets the heat. After the meal, some of the men nap, lying on the stone floor of the unfinished court. The shade is deep. The sleep is light. You can almost hear their breathing, the slow rhythm of men who have earned their rest. A fly buzzes, settles on a forearm, and is flicked away. The world is quiet. Seneb does not sleep. He sits against a column and closes his eyes. He lets his mind drift. He thinks of the lotus he is carving. The petals curve, and they will be painted red and blue and green. The paint will be applied by other workers, the painters who are skilled in mixing pigments. They use egg white to bind the colors, and they work with tiny brushes made from reeds. They are as meticulous as the stonecutters. The temple will be alive with color, a garden in stone. He thinks of the goddess Hathor, who is sometimes shown as a cow, sometimes as a woman with cow's ears. She is the goddess of love, music, and drunkenness. The workers will celebrate her festival soon, with dancing and beer and songs. It is a release from the labor, a moment of joy. The temple is not only a place of solemn ritual, it is also a stage for celebration. The people need both, the discipline of the work and the wildness of the feast. Seneb smiles at the thought. He remembers last year's festival when he drank too much and danced with his wife in the torchlight. The orange flames, the shadow of the temple, the drums, the feeling of being alive, of being part of something larger than himself. The afternoon resumes. The sun passes its zenith, and the heat begins to relent. The workers return to their posts. The chisels ring again. The women resume their weaving. The children play a game of skipping stones on the river. The world is in motion, but it is a gentle motion, like the current of the Nile. And you, listener, can feel that gentle motion. You are floating with it. The day is long, but it is not wearying. It is simply the day. The hours pass like the water under a boat, smooth and inevitable. As the afternoon deepens, Seneb's girl Merit comes to the site. She carries a small gourd of water for her father. She is allowed to approach the scaffold, but only if she is careful. She stands at the bottom and calls up. Seneb hears her voice, small and clear. He sets down his tools and climbs down. He takes the gourd and drinks, then kneels to her level. She tells him about a turtle she found near the river, a little one with a cracked shell. Listen seriously. He tells her they will go together to see it tomorrow before the work begins. Her face lights up. She hugs him, her dusty arms around his neck, and then she runs back to her mother. The moment is small, but it is everything. The work, the heat, the temple, all of it is for moments like this, for the children, for the future. The stones will outlast them, but the love is the only thing that matters. The sun begins to set. The sky turns orange, then pink, then a deep purple. The workers stop. They gather their tools, their water skins, their mats. They walk back to the village in groups, their footsteps raising a little dust. The temple is left alone, silhouetted against the sunset. The shadows of the columns stretch across the court like the fingers of a giant. Seneb walks home with his family. Merit is on his shoulders, her hands in his hair. Ka walks beside his mother, holding her hand. They pass the houses, the gardens, the goats being herded into their pens. The cooking fires are being lit. The smoke curls upward, mixing with the last light. Nefert begins the evening meal. She has gathered greens from the garden, a handful of herbs, and a few small fish that her son caught in the river. She grills the fish over the coals, and the smell is rich and earthy. She adds onions and garlic. The bread from the morning is still fresh enough. It is a simple supper, but it is nourishing. The family eats together, the children telling their stories, the parents listening. After the meal, the neighbors gather outside. Someone brings a drum, a simple frame with a stretched skin. Another brings a reed flute. They begin to play, a slow and gentle melody. A woman sings, her voice high and sweet. It is a song about the flood, about the fertility it brings, about the hope for a good harvest. The children dance, their movements clumsy and joyful. The stars appear one by one. Seneb sits with Nefert, her head on his shoulder. They watch their children dance. They listen to the music. They feel the cool air on their skin. The day is done. The night is here. And you, listener, can feel that cool air. You can hear the flute, the drum, the voices. You can see the faces lit by the fire, the shadows flickering. This is the same scene that has played out for thousands of years in every village along the Nile. The work ends and the community gathers. The heat is forgotten. The temple is a dark shape in the distance, but it is not forgotten. It is the reason they gather. It is the focus of their lives. But tonight, it is just a backdrop. Tonight, the stars are the temple. The music fades. The fire dies down. People drift back to their houses. The children are carried, half asleep, to their mats. Seneb and Nefert lie down together. He whispers something to her, and she laughs quietly. Then there is silence. The moon rises, a sliver of silver. It casts a pale light over the village, over the temple, over the river. The water glitters, a fish jumps, the splash tiny and brief. The world is asleep. The desert is quiet. The heat of the day is a memory, and the cool of the night is a blessing. You too can let yourself drift. Let the sounds fade. Let the images soften. The story of Seneb and Nefert and Merit and Ka is a story of a single day, but it is also the story of all days. The rhythm is eternal. The heat will return tomorrow, and the work will continue. But the rest will also return. The love will return. The song will return. And now there is nothing left to do but breathe. Let your breath be slow, like the temple stones settling. Let your mind be empty, like the great court at midnight. You are safe. You are warm. You are part of this ancient, gentle story. Stay here as long as you like. The night is long, and the story is patient. There will be more days, more chisels, more bread. But for now, there is only the deep, quiet breath of the world. The lotus closes its petals. The jackal sleeps. The river flows on. The end of the day. The beginning of the night. The beginning of your rest. The river flows on. The end of the day. The beginning of the night. The beginning of your rest. But the night does not end there. It simply deepens. The stars wheel overhead, slow and patient, as they have done for all the years before memory. The temple, now silent, still breathes. The stones contract in the cooling air, a tiny creak here and there, like the settling of an old house. It is the sound of stone finding its peace. In the village, the fires die to embers. The dogs stop barking. A baby cries for a moment, then is comforted by a sleepy mother's murmur. The sound is soft, barely a ripple in the quiet. It fades, and the silence returns. Seneb lies on his mat. He is not quite asleep. He is in that floating place between waking and dreaming, where thoughts come and go like leaves on a slow stream. He sees the lotus he carved, the petals unfurling. He sees his daughter's face when she told him about the turtle. He sees the face of his wife, her eyes closed, her breath even. He hears the distant howl of a jackal, a lonely sound that makes him smile. The jackal is sacred to Anubis, the god of the dead. But tonight the jackal is just a creature calling to its pack. It is not a sign. It is a voice of the desert. The desert itself is awake, but only in the way a sleeping person is awake in a dream. The sand cools. The wind moves, barely a whisper. A scorpion crawls across a rock, its legs delicate and deliberate. It finds a crevice and disappears. The desert does not sleep. It rests. It waits for the sun, the same way the workers wait. The desert has been waiting for thousands of years, and it will wait for thousands more. You, listener, are like that desert now. You are resting, but you are still aware. Sounds of your room, the weight of the blanket, the rhythm of your own breath. Let them be. Let them become part of the night. The jackal, the scorpion, the temple, the family on their mats. They are all here in this quiet. They are all part of the same stillness. In the temple, the moonlight falls through the unfinished roof. A bat flutters through the colonnade, its wings making a soft, papery whisper. It is hunting for insects, the tiny gnats that hover near the painted walls. The bat does not care about the gods. It only cares about the bugs. That is the way of nature. The temple is a home for the divine, but it is also a home for bats, for spiders, for the small lizards that cling to the stone. They do not pray. They simply live, and in their living, they bless the temple in a way that no priest ever could. The night deepens. The moon sets behind the western cliffs. The stars become brighter, more numerous. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a ribbon of dust, a river of light that mirrors the Nile below. The ancient Egyptians called it the celestial Nile, the waterway that the sun god sailed each night. And as you look up at it, you can imagine that same boat, with Ra in his bark, traveling through the underworld, bringing light to the souls of the dead. It is a story, but it is also a comfort. We are all travelers on that river, living and dead, awake and asleep. In the village, Seneb's breath deepens. He is asleep now. His dreams are quiet. He sees the lotus again, but this time it is alive, growing in a pool of water. The petals open, and inside is a tiny figure, a child, holding a chisel. It is Merit, his daughter, and she is carving something into the stone of the temple. She looks up and smiles. The dream is fleeting, like all dreams, but it is sweet. A rooster crows miles away in another village. It is early, too early for dawn. The rooster is confused by the moonlight. It crows again, then stops. The night is not over yet. There is time for more sleep. The workers will not stir until the first gray light touches the horizon. The temple knows this. It waits in the dark, patient. The Nile flows past, a ribbon of dark silk. It does not sleep. It never sleeps. It only moves, slow and constant, carrying the silt of the mountains to the delta. The water is the blood of Egypt. Every temple, every field, every loaf of bread owes its life to this river. And the river owes nothing to anyone. It just gives and takes away when it must. That is the nature of the great things. They do not explain themselves. They simply are. And you, listener, are part of that river now. You are floating. The current is gentle. You do not need to steer. You do not need to think. You only need to let yourself be carried. The temple recedes. The village recedes. The desert recedes. There is only the dark water and the stars reflected in it. A ripple rounds a bend. A fish jumps. The stars tremble and then settle. This is where you stay. This is the place of deep rest. The workers have earned their sleep. The temple has earned its silence. And you have earned this quiet moment, away from the noise of your day, your worries, your lists. They are all on the bank, standing still. You have stepped into the boat. The rope is untied. The river takes you. Breathe in. The air smells of wet earth and distant rain. Breathe out. The air is warm. The sound of the water is a lullaby. It is older than any song, older than any language. It is the sound of the world breathing. And so the night continues, without hurry, without end. The story of Seneb and his family is one story among many. There are thousands of stories like it, each one a thread in the great tapestry of the Nile. The weavers are asleep now. The loom is still. But tomorrow the threads will move again. For now there is only the quiet. The lotus remains closed. The jackal sleeps in its den. The temple waits for the dawn. And you, listener, wait for the dawn too, but not yet. There is still time. The night is long. The stars are many. The river flows on and on and on. Let it flow. Let yourself drift. Let sleep wrap around you like the cool wind off the river. You are safe. You are held. The story will still be here in the morning, carved in stone and water and memory. Rest now. The temple is at peace. The desert is still. And you are home in the ancient night.